Hello, fourth hour. Good morning. How is everyone? Hope you guys are doing good. I'm doing all right. So we are going to start lesson 4, solving proportions. And I'm just going to walk you through this lesson. So I want you to watch the lesson and just take your time before you practice the skill building new and review. All right. When we meet in Zoom, I'll explain a little bit more about how to turn in your assignments. But for now, I just want you to really focus and pay attention to what I'm going to do right now. All right. So let's look at number 1. So number 1, you have 2 fractions. You have 2/3. I'm going to zoom in here, and you have 6/12. So I'm going to compare the ratio 2/3 with the ratio 6/12. So we're going to write equivalent ratios with a common denominator. You guys are really great at finding common denominators. So the ratio is equivalent to 2/3 because we have a common denominator here, all right? And our common denominator is going to be 12 because 3 is a factor of 12 because 3 times 4 is 12, right? So if I had to multiply 3 times 4 to get to 12, what I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top, and then that would turn into an 8, all right? So I have to see then, I have to compare these 2 ratios. But the only way I can do it is if their denominators are the same number. So now we have 2 ratios that have the same denominator. We have 8/12 and 6/12, or 8/12, 6/12. So in terms of whether or not one is bigger than the other, I like to think of food because I love food. And specifically, I love chocolate. So would I rather have 8 out of 12 pieces of chocolate or 6 out of 12 pieces of chocolate? Well, I think everyone knows the answer to that question. I would like 8 pieces of chocolate, please, and thank you very much. So 8 is more than 6, right? So 8/12 is going to be greater than 6/12. So if I go back to my original ratios, these are my original ratios, right? Which one is greater if I'm comparing 2/3 or 6/12? Well, we found out it is 2/3 because we changed our ratio. We found the equivalent ratio. Okay, so let's do B. Let's compare 2/3 or 2/3 with the ratio of 10/12. So we're going to write equivalent ratios with a common denominator. And look at that. They're not trying to confuse you at all. They're using the same denominators here. So we're going to do this again. We're going to find, well, I know that 3 is a factor of 12. So I'm going to make my common denominator 12. And I'm going to multiply 4, both to the bottom and the top. So again, I have 8/12, right? So I'm going to write my 8/12 over here. And if I were to compare these 2 ratios, 8/12, 10/12. So which ratio is larger now? This one is larger, okay? So my numerator here is 10, and this is 8. So if I went back to my original problem, 2/3, 10/12, I would know that 10/12 is larger. Okay, so if I did solve problem C, we're going to compare the ratios 2/3 to 8/12. I'm going to do the same thing. So again, I'm 8 to 12 again. So 8 to 12, make that 8 a little bit better. So 8 to 12, 8 to 12. What do you notice? If you were in front of me, you would say they're the same. They are. Okay, so they're equal to. All right. So that's number 1, comparing ratios, finding out which one is larger. So for problem number 2, I'm going to move this up here for you. All right. I'm looking at a proportion in a very different way. So a proportion is an equation that shows 2 ratios are equivalent or the same, okay? So now I have to solve for an unknown or for a variable. And the variable in this problem is n, okay? So the equation in problem 2 represents a proportion. It shows that the ratio 6 to 10 is equivalent or equal to the ratio 15 to n. But I don't know what n is. N is the unknown number. So this proportion is read 6 to 10 as 15 is to n, okay? 6 is to 10 as 15 is to n. That's how I would read that. So we have to find the value of n. So we're going to write an equation, and we're going to do this fancy thing called cross multiplication. That's how we are going to solve this problem, okay? So I'm going to get another color here. Let's see. I'm going to get green since I used purple. So when I cross multiply, I am going to multiply the numerator of the ratio on the left, which is 6, by the denominator of the ratio on the right, which is n. All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. I'm going to circle that. Okay? And I'm going to do that to the other one also. Okay? And what these circles are going to tell me is that I'm going to multiply this circle that I made, and then I'm going to multiply the numbers in this circle that I'm going to make. So I'm going to do my 6 and my n first. So I'm going to say 6 times n equals, and then I'm going to do my 10 times my 15. Okay? Kind of call them like my cross the street neighbors, okay? I'm going to multiply with my cross the street neighbors right here. All right, so I know that I cannot multiply a number times a letter. So when I see that happening, I know I'm just going to combine it and make it 6n. So this becomes 6n. And 10 times 15. Whoa, that's big, right? Well, I have my handy dandy calculator here. Okay. So if I have 10 times 15, it's 150, which 15, and then you would just add your 0 from the 10. 150. Perfect. All right. Well, we're still not done yet because I still don't know what n means. I still don't know what n is worth. So I'm going to drop this 150 down here. And when I have 6n equals 150 or a number, I know that I have to get that n by itself. And the only way I'm going to do that is now I'm going to divide. I'm going to do the opposite of what it's telling me to do. So I remember before we left, we were learning that when you have a number and a variable next to it, it automatically means that you're going to multiply. Okay? A star or this kind of symbol also means multiplication. Parentheses also mean multiplication. So I'm going to do the opposite of what it's telling me to do. I am going to divide. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to divide by 6 to both sides so I can get n by itself. Now I'm going to cross out 6. 6 divided by 6 is just 1. And if you remember, when you see a variable, you know there's like that invisible math. There's that invisible number 1 right here that we don't really know about. And then we're going to divide 150 divided by 6, which is going to give us 25. So n is equivalent or is equal to 25 in this case. All right?